5-0? 4-0. Please let's stand for the pledge, and when we're done with the pledge, we're going to stay standing so that the chamber ensemble can perform the Star Spangled Banner for us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
While we're waiting on Dr. Bosser's mic, I'll say that was beautiful, and you just elevated our board meeting to a higher level than we normally have. So thank you, Mrs. Gellert, and the Chamber Ensemble.
And they're about to do it again. As part of Board Recognition Week, I reached out to Mrs. Gellert to see if some of our most outstanding students could provide some entertainment to help make this a special night for our board to recognize all of your efforts and volunteerism. So they prepared an additional piece to help us enjoy. For our very talented musicians and their wonderful conductor, Mrs. Geller, if you wouldn't mind, I have a certificate I would like to present to the group. And if they would just stay for a quick photo that Valerie would help us with. And perhaps the building administration and members of the board would like to join us for the photo. Easy if we move there.
We're doing the London.
All right, Valerie,
We're just gonna need everybody to
conduct.
squeeze together really close, so we can have all the musicians together on the inside and then the administrators on the side. I think that would be best.
Yeah, make sure you're safe. Like a.
I felt very alone.
Somebody go on Dr. Bowser.
I had my job going back because I was like,
Getting
what
everyone.
am I gonna do? Pick my American flag shirt, put a class. I'm gonna put on my job going back. I don't wanna look like a fool.
Okay, there we go. That's everyone. First photo, I'm just gonna test my lighting. Okay, guys, ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Great.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
guys.
It was no different this year, and I know that you all appreciate hearing from them.
Well, I will share with the board, I reached out to Mrs. Geller to see if she would be available, and before I finished this, she said yes. So it's always nice to highlight the accomplishments of our students, and I thank Mrs. Geller for putting together the group and the piece so quickly. It's early in the year, and we're still.
Even though I could have gone to the Yankee game tonight.
I hope you did.
That's because it was rescheduled, so. That's all right.
We'll talk tomorrow, Karen. There's dedication, then there's insanity.
That's on her.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're very welcome. Really, really, a pleasure.
I'd like to have a motion to accept the minutes of the meeting from September 26, 2019. Mr. Lamena, seconded by Mrs. Weiss, all in favor, 4-0. And now back to a more interesting portion of the agenda, the commendation.
Absolutely. We take time out of each meeting to commend and recognize special individuals throughout the district. We are very proud of our students, we are very proud of our faculty and support staff, and we enjoy recognizing members of the community. And one thing we need to be sure to do and take time out for is to recognize the members of the Board of Education. So the New York State School Board Association designates 1 week a year to do that. And while we appreciate and applaud your efforts throughout the year, this is the one time where we get to take a time out to say thank you. There are many misconceptions about members of the Board of Education. I teach a class of graduate students who are teachers, who are aspiring administrators, and we talk about governance and the way school systems work, and even amongst an educated group like that, there are some misconceptions about board members. There are some misconceptions that this is a compensated position. There are misconceptions that somehow you do not need to pay the school tax portion of your tax bill if you serve on the Board of Education. There are some misconceptions that somehow you earn a pension if you serve long enough on the board. Lots of things that just aren't true. Every member of every board, and this Elwood board, you're all volunteers. You all sacrifice time from your families, your personal lives, and other responsibilities that you have. The time you dedicate to this position extends well beyond our public meetings. The preparation that goes into it, the committee work that you do, the acting as liaison between the community and the school district takes a good deal of time, focus, and attention. And your only reward is your ability to stand back and be proud of the work that's being done. So tonight is a night that we just take a step back and say thank you to all of you. I'm sorry that Mr. Tomeo had a class tonight that conflicted with his ability to hear these words as well. Perhaps he's watching from home. But we have some certificates for you to recognize your efforts, and we have some gifts for you on behalf of the District Office Administration that we would like to share with you. So I am sure all those present join me in saying thank you, and we appreciate your efforts. They are all the same, and I do have to extend thank you to Coach Shanahan and Mr. Hanna, who actually helped me to procure these gifts. 1, 2, 3, open your bill. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So wear them with your Elwood pride. Ms. Clemente, would you please share the one that you received in addition? Because this is now a board tradition, turn it around. Our board is the Fab Five. So as you were the only member of the board who did not receive this one last year, we had to bring you up to speed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
With many thanks on behalf of all of District Office.
Thank you.
Wear them in good health and perhaps on Saturday at our homecoming festivities. And with that, we have some additional individuals that have made wonderful contributions to the Elwood School District and John Glenn High School that we'd like to recognize at this time. And to do that, I would like to call upon our principal, Mrs. Brzezinski.
Good evening, Dr. Bosser, District Administration, and members of the Board of Education. It truly is my pleasure to present to you this year's Noble Knight recipients. As you are aware, last year was the inaugural year for the Noble Knight Award. Last year, the administrative team wanted to establish a process that would recognize and honor the great work that we saw going on in the classrooms, on the fields, and in co-curricular settings on a daily basis. We also wanted to provide the faculty with an opportunity to celebrate the successes of their colleagues. Lastly, we really wanted to foster an environment whereby faculty notice and recognize with great intentionality the impact that a fellow colleague working in perhaps another academic department has on the Elwood community. Thus, the Noble Knight Award idea was born. Now it is customary practice to begin each faculty meeting with the Noble Knight Award, whereby the previously knighted member gives a speech to highlight the exemplary talents of the selected colleague. This colleague is also presented with a certificate and a bobblehead that they place with pride on their desk. And it truly has been wonderful to see the John Glenn faculty recognize and honor and support one another across the various disciplines through this Noble Knight Award. And while these 10 faculty members come from different departments, they each work tirelessly to ensure that our students get the best educational experience that John Glenn has to offer. So it is indeed my pleasure to introduce to you the 2018-2019 Noble Knights. When I call your name, please join me. Sue Campo, a very dedicated special education teacher. Kristen Burks, our speech proficienado. Eileen Cucci, our family and consumer science teacher. Mr. Joe Pushy. You told me to speed things up, there's the end. Mr. Joe Pushy, the lonely gentleman and fantabulous math teacher. Tracy Ott. Forgive me, I'm doing them in the order. September, October, November, I apologize.
No. Makes my life much easier.
Tracy Ott, an exceptional physical education and health educator. Miss Joanna Sepp, our social worker, could not attend tonight, but we applaud her efforts as well. Ms. Shannon Flores Chuddick, another one of our exemplary special education teachers. The World Language Department had plenty Noble Knights last year. Ms. Nicole Correa, our ASL educator. Ms. Diane Warren, another one of our tremendous foreign language world language educators. Followed by Ms. Nicole Ginjoyan, another one of our wonderful world language educators. And last but not least, our dynamic math educator, Ms. Samantha Hewer. It is truly my honor to celebrate all of you. You have been selected by your fellow colleagues. It is a tremendous accomplishment to be honored in such a way. I applaud you for the great work that you do, and I am tremendously proud to work with each and every one of you. Congratulations.
Now we will have Mr. Zain Siddiqui present the student liaison report.
I'm sorry, I moved the podium. While we're moving the podium, I'd like to point out. I would like to point out before Zane begins to speak that last year's student liaison to the Board of Education, Sandy Song, is present with us tonight to either support Zane or grade Zane. We'll figure out which it is at the conclusion of the meeting. Okay, very good.
Hi everyone, I'm super excited to be back this month to report the happenings at Elwood over the past few weeks since the last meeting. Beginning at Harley, the students will have their Halloween parade on Thursday, October 31st at 10:15 a.m. This is an infamous event at Harley where all the students can be seen in costume marching alongside their fellow classmates. The school also held its first PTA run book fair the first week of October. Special thanks to all of the super helpful volunteers. At Boyd, they hosted their annual back-to-school picnic. Fun was had by all. Their Halloween parade will be at 8:30 on October 31st, and their Halloween party will be held on October 25th. Boyd teachers had their first professional development session with their TC staff developer. The students at Boyd will be attending an Internet Safety Assembly tomorrow presented by Officer Lara Corbett, such an important topic to instill in young minds. At Jungman High School, this year's Spirit Week is this week. Everyone in the high school is buzzing with energy and excitement for tomorrow's pep rally, followed by the homecoming parade and game on Sunday. Congratulations are in order for a number of individuals at Jungman. First, Sue Hewer passed down the Noble Knight honor to her mentor, Sarah Santos Camacho, a dedicated math teacher. Students at John Glenn are always striving to be the best, and with that being said, Matthew McNerney has been recognized as the valedictorian for the class of 2020, and Michael Barron the salutatorian. We are proud to say that 14 students achieved the summa cum laude distinction, 17 with the magna cum laude, and 15 with cum laude. This past Tuesday, the John Glenn Marching Band and Kickline team performed at the annual Newsday Band Festival. The band and Kickline team displayed the dazzling talent our students had to offer. Yay, Newsday Tuesday! On October 16th, sophomores and juniors at John Glenn took the PSAT. Students were given the opportunity to gain exposure to the exam and possibly qualify for merit scholarship. Our amazing counseling center is continuing to bring colleges to our very own John Glenn. On October 26th, the school will be hosting its annual college consortium in which students can sign up for Onavians. About 55 colleges will be attending for seniors to be able to go down, speak with admissions reps, and meet and look at different schools. The Shared Decision-Making Committee at Glenn has also been working diligently to start a new initiative at the school, Student of the Month. This is an award given by student nominations and then selected by faculty on the basis of effort rather than academic achievement. This month's nomination process by students is currently going on at John Glenn. You can see the QR codes displayed around the building. This Sunday is the Breast Cancer Walk, where the National Honor Society and girls soccer team will be making strides as support. In all 4 schools, there's exhilarating excitement for what's to come, and I look forward to updating you once again in November. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Siddiqui. Ms. Song, how did you do? We will have our second annual Wall of Fame induction ceremony. This is a wonderful new tradition that's begun in Elwood and that our community has really responded very well to. Last year, we inducted the new Wall of Fame members during halftime, and it took a bit longer than we anticipated, and we delayed the start of the second half about a half an hour. So the officials weren't happy with me, Coach Shanahan was ready to kill me, and we've changed the way we're going to do things. So immediately following the parade, there's going to be a wonderful luncheon, courtesy of the Elwood Booster Club sponsorship in the John Glenn High School cafeteria. And we have invited the entire community to attend and hear the recognition speeches that will be given for Mary Kate Sicoli and for Pat Scarola. And we will have plaques to present to them and then hang forever in the hallways of Elwood Middle School moving forward. It's my understanding that Scarola family is bringing about 50 guests, and the Sicolis are sure to do the same. So it should be a wonderful event. The honorees or their families will be marching with us in the homecoming parade with their Wall of Fame sashes on, and we think it's a nice new tradition that's been added to our homecoming weekend. At halftime, when we have a big crowd, they will be recognized and they'll be able to stand and wave, and we won't have to take a half an hour of halftime to do it. So we think it's a nice new tradition, and I look forward to engaging in that with the Board of Education. Thank you.
We're now up to residents' remarks. The board encourages all residents to attend its meetings, and this section of the agenda affords them the opportunity to speak. Persons wishing to speak should identify themselves and any organization that they represent at the meeting. Comments related to district business or any agenda item should be kept as brief as possible and may not exceed 3 minutes. Questions or comments concerning matters which are not on the agenda will be taken under consideration and may be discontinued by the president. Public discussion in matters relating to staff, students, or others at which the reputations, privacy, or right to due process could in some way be violated is prohibited. Any resident remarks?
Come on, Annie. Tell us how where John Glenn High School prepared you for your university experience. Let's go.
Actually prepared me really well. Like there's, I don't know, like I'm loving
Okay, let's have that reflected in the minutes, thank you.
Seeing no more resident remarks, or by force or by choice, we'll move on to one of our presentations this evening, which is going to be made by Ms. Lorraine Dunkel for the audit report and fund balance.
Good luck, Marty. Every year, as part of our financial oversight process, faculty, this would be a good time to go check out the Yankee game, just so we're all on the same page. Zane, Annie, it's been a pleasure. As the board is well aware, part of our financial oversight is to have both internal and external auditors monitor the operations of our business office. While we have internal and some very highly skilled professionals working within that setting, we have many layers of oversight to make sure that everything transpiring within our financial procedures is at the highest level of accuracy and competency. So we are pleased to share with you some of the results of our annual audit report as done.
Thank you, Dr. Bossert. Thank you to the board. Very brief presentation. I just wanted to go over the review of the external audit for year end June 30, 2019 and the fund balance status as of June 30th as well. So the district received an I'm sorry, excuse me. Resuming. So the district received an unmodified opinion on the June 30th financial statements. There were no material weaknesses in our internal controls, which is essentially all of the business office functions from payroll to accounts payable, the district treasurer, all those functions that fall within the business office. And the general fund unassigned fund balance at year end was roughly 2.5 million, which equals the maximum allowable by New York State, which is 4% of the current 19-20 budget. And that's always a goal on an annual budget, is to reach the 4% unassigned fund balance. Management findings. Each year, the auditors, in their as part of their review, they write up any management findings that they may find. This year we had 2 instances in the extra classroom accounts. We had 2 clubs which had discrepancies related to cash receipts, and payroll, it was noted that signatures were not being required on a payroll change report. What that means is when the payroll clerk processes payroll, she submits it to the district treasurer for review, and there's a payroll change report that compares one payroll to the next. And it is currently being reviewed, but it wasn't currently being signed off on. The auditors knew that we were doing it because it was part of the packet, but didn't have the initials of the people who were actually doing the review. So as part of the corrective action plan for payroll, the reports will now be signed by both the payroll clerk and the treasurer. So the corrective action plan relates to extra classroom. Training is going to be continued to be provided by the internal auditors for all of the advisors that manage the collecting and dispersing of any monies through all extra classroom accounts. And as many of you know, that is something that is on most annual reports, is slight findings in the extra classroom activities, but the number of findings have gone down over the last few years. Fund balance. During the course of the year, I'm currently reviewing, I'm currently reviewing the fund balance and doing projections and providing them to the Board of Education, monitoring fund balance and reserves. And updates will continue to be provided throughout the year as well as during the budget process. This is just a snapshot of the year-end fund balance for June 30th, 2019. You can see it lists each of our reserves. In the middle, we have the 2018 balance. To the left of that is the 2019 balance, and the variances are in the increase, decrease columns. So essentially, we didn't have many changes with the exception of the ERS reserve. We allocated monies from the ERS reserve to pay for the 18-19 ERS expenses. And that was part of the original budget plan for 2018-19. So because we allocated those monies, the overall fund balance of the district went down about $330,000. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I just have a comment. From the audit committee, the extra classroom is an issue across every school district in the country. I just wanted to make note that out of that committee, we had implemented a training program for all advisors to go through, because although it's prevalent in every district, we want to keep it as minimal as possible. So I just want to commend your office for doing a great job implementing that. And we've seen a significant decrease in the amount of instances that have come through.
Yes.
So thank you. And
Thank
thank you
you.
to the members of the audit committee that helped, bring that forward and put that into effect.
Thank you. That pretty much concludes my presentation, unless anybody has some questions.
Just to expand upon the training, you'll do that for every advisor that is implemented into so it's a continual process?
Yes, each
It's not
year
just
we're going to
one
have
time
training, even for those, it's a retraining each year we'll have, just to make sure that everybody. Yes, and with any new advisor in a particular year, we're working on having the current other advisors work with them and developing somewhat of a manual on how to process all of the cash receipts and disbursements to keep the minimization down of those findings.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I would just add to build off what Mrs. Mamalito said, that more broadly, to have no material weaknesses identified in terms of internal controls and an unmodified opinion is a great accomplishment, and it speaks to the discipline with which the district is approaching financials, so a lot to be proud of there.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dunkel. And thank you for the kind remarks from the board. We are very happy with how favorable the report came out, and we would hope for continued reports of that nature in the future. The next presentation is one that we're very excited to provide to the board. This is something that we present the board with lots of information. We do some data mining, we take you through reasons results and things of that nature. And there are some things that you routinely will hear about. This is a little different in that we are bringing to you something that is cause for celebration that has been added to our practices within the school district and specifically at John Glenn High School. There are different initiatives. When we talk about best practice, sometimes it's, well, what is that? So when we find ways to identify what best practice is to help increase student achievement, it's how we move from good to great. So this is an example of an initiative that will help us continue on our path and our race for excellence and help us shifting from good to great. And this has been a long time coming and a wonderful process to present and celebrate our accomplishments in the area of instructional rounds. I would like to call upon once again Mrs. Brzezinski and Mr. McNamara. One clap for the Army.
Good evening again. I really am excited and proud to celebrate the great work that is happening in the classrooms at John Glenn High School and how the instructional rounds program is helping to enhance teaching and learning at the high school. Tonight's presentation is designed to provide you with an overview of the program that has been implemented at John Glenn High School. More specifically, tonight's presentation will cover what instructional rounds are, why the research promotes instructional rounds as something that will elevate the educational environment, what components are needed to successfully implement and sustain instructional rounds, and lastly, how a systemic, ongoing commitment to an instructional round process can positively impact the overall educational environment. Now, admittedly, I do get really excited about the power of this process and can speak for hours about the multitude of positive outcomes that are a direct result of instructional rounds. You can ask Dr. Hall, as just last night I went well over an hour discussing the benefits of the program to a class of aspiring administrators. And I would welcome that opportunity, but given the fact that the Yankees are on, I have been charged with keeping it to 30 minutes. I'm going to do my best. So to begin. Yes? There we go. It is important to note that while instructional rounds models can take on various iterations depending on the needs and the culture of a school, a typical instructional round model will include teams of practitioners, teachers and administrators engaged in examining a model of instruction, also known as Dr. Bossert mentioned, best practice, through a series of classroom visitations. This process was adapted from the medical rounds model that is a long established practice in the medical field, which is designed to improve the practice of prospective and current doctors in both diagnosing and curing patients. Physicians, as you may know, use medical rounds as a major way of improving their theory and practice. As you may have seen on many TV shows such as ER and House, the most commonly used version of medical rounds has a group of medical interns, residents, and supervising or attending physicians visiting patients, observing and discussing evidence for various diagnoses, and after thorough analysis of the evidence, they discuss possible treatments. And while the idea of conducting these rounds has been a long-established practice in the medical field, the process is relatively new to the field of education. While many have conducted research and have written bodies of work on the impact of instructional rounds, I was drawn to the work of Robert Marzano, and have used his research that I learned about at a conference dating back to 2007 and the tenets of his model as a reference when creating the instructional rounds model that we are currently using at John Glenn High School. I know that the board goal of extraordinary student focus focuses on using data and research to drive our instructional decisions. So similar to medical rounds, conducting rounds in a school setting is known as, yes, you guessed it, instructional rounds, and is intended to help instructional leaders and practitioners develop a shared understanding of what high-quality practice looks like, how to increase the use of best practices, and to enhance the learning experiences for every student. And while medical practitioners conduct rounds to explore best practices in the medical field, such as discovering what is the best way to treat hypertension, or they might be looking at how to exhibit the proper bedside manner to help develop a strong rapport with patients, educational practitioners are conducting rounds to explore the most effective way to create a welcoming classroom environment, or how to determine what is the best pedagogical approach to formatively assess a student. As you may know, teaching can often be an isolating profession. Teachers essentially come to work, they go into their classrooms, and they teach. Yes, occasionally they get the opportunity to go out to a conference or engage in professional development within the district. But we also know that sometimes the best PD is given by the teacher right down the hall. So implementing an instructional round model made sense. It puts in place a process whereby teachers can visit the classrooms of their colleagues, and in doing so, and this is important to note, the primary purpose is for observing teachers to go into those classrooms and compare their own instructional practices with those of the teachers they observe. The chief benefit of this approach resides in the discussion that takes place with the team following the observation and also in the subsequent self-reflection. So teachers are going in, they're watching the practice, and they're really engaging in internal dialogue. Am I doing this? Can I do this? Should I be doing this? So on and so forth. Any questions so far? Okay. So now we have an understanding of what instructional rounds may look like and the research that supports the practice. The next question to answer is, what components are necessary for successful implementation? this is a wonderful idea, there's research to support it, and then, okay, so how do we bring it to John Glenn High School? How do we implement it? This timeline captures some of the steps that have been taken over the past 3 years to bring this model to fruition. To bring an instructional model into any school, especially in a decade when APPR has such a profound impact on teacher perception of classroom visitations, was a tall order. Although we were still conducting well over 160 observations to satisfy the APPR regulations, instructional rounds would be additional classroom visitations. So prior to the full implementation, a great deal of time was spent building awareness, forming committees, dispelling the myths, addressing concerns, and perhaps the most critical component, building trust with the staff. And building trust, as you know, takes time. Knowing that classroom visitations were often connected to the negative implications associated with APPR, it was critical to us, the administrative team, to communicate to the faculty that instructional rounds is distinct from supervision and evaluation, that it was a pure-intentioned, research-based process through which best practices can be identified, discussed, and shared in a non-threatening environment. Each step identified on this timeline was critical to gain buy-in and support from the staff. During the initial implementation of instructional rounds, the administrative team began by modeling the impact of instructional rounds by conducting an administrative version of instructional rounds. In order to accomplish this lofty goal, Mr. McNamara, Mr. Cole, and myself had to make it a priority to get out into classrooms well above the APPR requirements. We met several times to discuss the impact of instructional rounds, to carve out time in our schedules. The three of us often divide and conquer. So to come together as a team, we had to make this a priority. We then had to make sure that other distractions did not take precedence over getting into the classrooms. We had to make these visitations a number one triage on our priority list. On the identified day, the three of us would get out into the halls and inevitably, Ms. Brzezinski, Mr. McNamara, and we had to continue to move ahead in pursuit of our goal. And it became a common understanding, sorry, we're going to conduct rounds. And we were really excited on these days. On the identified day, we would get to visit 6 classrooms for approximately 3 to 5 minutes with the objective of collectively identifying best practices. Here is an example of just the rounds that took place last week. These are pictures of the various classrooms that we visited. Following the rounds, we share this out with our staff via Google Classroom. We tweet it out to promote the best practices that we had seen in the classrooms that we visited. And there's just tremendous stuff happening in the classrooms. The other exciting piece in doing these rounds is the students see the three of us as lead learners. And they ask questions like, what are you doing? We're just looking at, what you guys are doing, and they're sharing their work with us. And so it's a really great way to model the importance of getting into the classrooms. Following the rounds, the three of us then carve out additional time to come back and meet and discuss the practices that we had seen in the classroom. This is really critical for us because this is an opportunity for us to norm and establish inter-reader reliability to ensure that the language that we're using in conversations with the staff and the language that we're using in our written observations matches our goals. And it really communicates to the staff that we are synergistic in our expectations of what best practice looks like. And then we spend time collectively writing a letter to each of the staff members whose classroom we visit. Feedback to the faculty. We found that the specific feedback to the faculty was important for a variety of reasons. Number one, it reinforced the message that the conversations were focused only on the positive. And as I mentioned, there's so much positive going on. It provided us with another opportunity to identify and promote best practices. It was a timely acknowledgement of their efforts in the classroom, and it was a reinforcer of the spirit and pride that we see on a daily basis in our building. And once again, it promoted trust by staying positive and non-evaluative. And teachers taught. And they were really excited to get the letters in the mailbox and see that we were really identifying and appreciating the great work that was going on. Yet, despite the positive spirit and the value in the instructional round process, I liken it to flossing or eating broccoli. We know it's good for us, but sometimes folks just don't want to buy in. And there were still some faculty members that were uncertain of the instructional round process as a whole. And this really could probably be connected to the negative sentiment of APPR. So we still had to dispel more myths. But as luck would have it, a great opportunity was presented to me. John Glenn High School had been the host of another school coming, Islip High School, to see our reading program. And during that visit, the teachers that were visiting the reading program were discussing the value of the reading program at Glenn, and I had some time to spend with the Islip principal. During that time, I was just sharing with him that I was in the infancy stages of launching the instructional round program, and that there were still some staff members that perhaps were a little hesitant to participate. There were staff members that were very excited, and the perfectionist in me wants to get everybody to buy in. And he shared with me that he had a very robust program that had already been in place for about 5 years at Islip High School, and extended the favor back and invited me and Mr. McNamara and some members of our team to go and see it in action at Islip High School. This is an example for the staff members to see it again in a non-threatening way. It's an authentic field experience for them. And so we were able to capitalize on that invitation, survey the staff, and see who was interested in joining us. The response when I put out the Google survey to the staff who would like to participate was overwhelmingly positive. And so really we had to pare down the folks that wanted to participate, and we selected some really great folks that we knew. Some were really energized and excited, and others were a little hesitant. So that perfect composition we took with us to Islip. Here are some photos of the day. Our teachers went and saw instructional rounds in practice, saw how excited the students were at Islip High School to share not only with their teachers and their administrators in Islip, but other folks from other schools. And so needless to say, the folks that participated in this experience came back highly energized, and they were eating the broccoli and flossing their teeth. So when they returned, it was like we had the perfect momentum. And as you may know, Superintendent's Conference Day, and this visit took place on November 1st. Shortly thereafter, we have Superintendent's Conference Day, which is a building principal's dream. It's a day where we get to engage in professional development. A building principal has the opportunity to share his or her vision with the staff and just really delve deeper. But fortunately and unfortunately, it was the precise time that Dr. Bossert, myself, and Mr. Pushy were invited to Washington, D.C., where we were presented with the Blue Ribbon Award by the Secretary of Education, and it was instructional rounds, blue ribbon. So we went to Washington, D.C., and I was just super comfortable and pleased that I had spent the time with Mr. McNamara and Mr. Cole discussing the value of the instructional round model. Both of them shared that vision, and Mr. McNamara said, I will gladly turnkey the professional development opportunity on Superintendent's Conference Day to further strengthen and embolden the energy of the folks that participated in the Islip field experience, but also again to continue to spread awareness among the faculty members who just weren't quite sure, and continue to dispel the myths and allay any sort of concerns. At this point, I would like to turn it over to Mr. McNamara so he can share some of the work that took place on Superintendent's Conference Day.
Thank you, Ms. Brzezinski. I'd just like to take a brief moment to express my gratitude to everyone here for the opportunity to not only be a part of this initiative, but to present here this evening. So thank you, and thank you, Ms. Brzezinski. Back to Superintendent's Conference Day last year. The instructional round session was one of many opportunities that the staff members could attend that day. A number of faculty members who participated in the Islip experience, as Ms. Brzezinski was just sharing, were invited to attend the workshop to help facilitate some of our discussions. Other attendees were from multiple content areas and expressed varying comfort levels of participation with this initiative. As Ms. Brzezinski is a firm believer in modeling best practices through PD sessions or developing workshops, in our planning we incorporated a variety of interactive learning activities that we would hope our teachers would use in their own classrooms rather than simply just lecture about the process. This included the deliberate choice in the room that we held our workshop in. There's a picture of it up there. The classroom is a critical component that contributes to student learning, and Charlotte Danielson identifies a highly effective classroom as a warm and inviting place for students to learn. This classroom was an exemplar of this domain. The one activity that I want to highlight involved participants sharing a website or a use of technology that they have found to be beneficial in using in their classrooms. A unique way was designed to form groups and foster some dialogue amongst the participants. As we expanded our groups, the dialogue expanded. And what resulted was about 20 to 25 minutes worth of our participants just sharing what they found to be so beneficial in their classrooms. So much that they were expressing how excited they were to now move forward in the next upcoming days and perhaps implement what they had just learned in their conversations with their colleagues. Now this is like the foundation of what instructional rounds really is. But instructional rounds takes it to the next level. It allows the teachers to see the implementation in action. It allows them to not only hear about it and say, oh, how could I use that? It allows them to see, I saw them put this in place and I might be able to use that in my classroom. So here we are in a workshop and they're really loving just the talk of it, but instructional rounds allows them to actually see it happen and take place. So it was a great opportunity, and again, I thank Ms. Brzezinski for allowing me to present that on that day.
And truly, to have a vision and to be right there, and you can really lose momentum. A great idea really is nothing without a plan and people to bring it to fruition. So I thank Mr. McNamara for his efforts to continue to build this awareness and to foster additional buy-in. And now, really, the energy was infectious. There was more faculty that were interested in participating in instruction rounds, and we were really one step closer to achieving a goal that was established 2 years prior. The next phase of the process included the very exciting logistics, okay? Among other things, we had to determine a date on the calendar that was least disruptive to the educational environment. We wanted to make sure it didn't conflict with the winter breaks, with midterm review, with teachers preparing for AP exams. These were some of the reasons that the staff had expressed that they didn't want to, quote, participate. And some of the faculty members, I was like, you're doing such great stuff. Why aren't you looking to participate? Some of them were so pure intention, they just didn't want to be out of their classrooms. So, we talked to them about opening up their classroom for the rounds. That is my reminder to take my antibiotic. Sorry. All right. So we had to also then, from that investigation and assessing the faculty concern and who wanted to participate, now we had to identify the staff members that wanted to conduct the visitations and the faculty members who would really, and this is a key component, be vulnerable enough to open up their classrooms, not only just to administrators, and we, you'll see, did not participate in the actual visitations of the official launch of instruction rounds, but really opening it up to their colleagues. Who am I to teach a lesson and have 5 colleagues come in and see what I'm doing? What makes me the beacon of best practice? Many of our faculty members are so humble and they just were uncomfortable with people visiting for a variety of reasons. So again, spending time building awareness, dispelling the myths, building their confidence, and helping them to see the value in the model took some time. And then, of course, once we know who's going to participate, which classrooms they're going to visit, we had to also arrange for substitute coverage. And if you know anything about finding substitutes, that probably took us the most time. So here is the eventual schedule for the first day, which took place on May 21st, 2019. As you may recall, I arrived at John Glenn High School in 2014, and this is something that I had seen in place in my former district that I was excited to bring in. And so my initial posture was like, they're just going to, agree to do this and it's going to just roll out. But again, it takes time, it takes awareness, it takes trust, it takes, establishing, understanding the culture of the building. So needless to say, I was super excited on May 21st, 2019. This was after AP exams, so we had addressed the concern of some of our folks that didn't want to leave the class to prepare their students, rightfully so. The day was comprised of a morning workshop in the library, followed by the classroom visitations. We tried to select teachers of different grade levels, different disciplines, integrated co-teaching, AP classes, so that the staff visiting really can see a wide variety of classrooms, disciplines, and approaches. After the visitations, we met back in the library to debrief. The ISLIP participants served as the facilitators of that discussion, and similar to Mr. McNamara, Mr. Cole, and my providing feedback to the faculty after our rounds, the faculty members that participated provided feedback to the teachers whose classrooms they visited. So the morning workshop. Here you see our teachers engaged in, again, understanding what instructional rounds are. Some of them were new, some of them, again, as I mentioned, participated in the ISLIP experience. It was a really energizing morning. Ms. Nicole Ganjoyan, one of our teachers, helped to facilitate the workshop along with Mr. Cole and Mr. McNamara and myself. So the morning was dedicated again to awareness, establishing norms and guidelines. When we go into classrooms, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're not going to do, so on and so forth. And they were ready to go.
So this is when we put our theory into practice. As Ms. Berzinski has been explaining, she, myself, Mr. Cole, we're always very excited to get into the classroom and see the wonderful instruction that is taking place. Because of all the hard work that we have described so far with regard to instructional rounds and the capacity that was built, it was a proud moment for us when our faculty shared the same eagerness and excitement to get into the classroom, share their classrooms with some of their colleagues. This was a moment that we knew that they were ready to go out and be there on their own conducting those instructional rounds. Once the visits were complete, we met back as a group, and as anticipated, the energy and enthusiasm was palpable. Each participant was given time to sit and reflect on the experience, and was then given the opportunity to write down examples of best practices that they had gleaned during their classroom visitations. They discussed the best practices with their groups, and then were ultimately asked to identify 3 of the top highlights for each and every classroom that they visited. These highlights were then used to craft those thank you and feedback letters to those teachers who were visited, which the group themselves suggested that they wanted to help write. And the results were beautiful.
As you can see here, here's an example of, each faculty member was given personal thinking time to come back and reflect individually. And they worked together with their group to collaborate. And then we had displayed anchor charts in the library for them to go and post all their feedback. And it was really remarkable to see the trends that they each identified as best practices. And you can see some examples here. But really one of the salient takeaways that I just want to draw your attention to is here you can see the internal dialogue that is happening with each practitioner. And it's noted the second phrase that is up there, or excerpt or quote, "Your classroom is a warm learning environment that," admittedly this person writes, "looks nothing like mine." So what is the hope here? By that practitioner going into another person's classroom and saying, "Wow, this is amazing," perhaps that person will go and employ some of those strategies that he or she, I know who it is, hadn't done before. And that practitioner is doing a fabulous job and getting great results. And often as administrators, you might say, it really helped if you kind of spruce up the joint. You know, Danielson talks about a warm and inviting environment, yet this person's doing really well. But for them to have that internal reflection and dialogue is really, it's illustrated right here. The other piece that was just so exciting for us to see is written, I think it's the third one down. I love your decorations. I will be making a poster of your accountable talk. Now, what you need to know is the person that wrote that is a veteran world language teacher. And he or she, without giving their name, was observing a classroom of a newer math teacher. So the power of a world language teacher looking at a practice that a math teacher was employing, writing down that she or he is going to employ it in their classroom environment, and then we go in and see it translated into the language, was just a powerful example of how instructional rounds can elevate the educational environment for all students across every discipline. Teacher feedback. Again, we want to collect the data. Are they eating the broccoli? Do they realize the broccoli is good for them? Are they enjoying it? Do they feel better about themselves? So we had one of our teachers help us to create a survey that we were going to give to the faculty that participated in the instructional rounds. And we asked them a series of questions, as you can see to the left. This is a post-survey. What was the most useful strategy that you saw today that you would like to use in your instructional environment? To what would you like to participate in? Would you like to participate in future instructional rounds? By visiting classrooms, would you open up your classroom? And you can see that the responses from the faculty were overwhelmingly positive. I failed to mention that we had 22 faculty members participate in our first instructional round launch. So now you have these folks that are energized, they see the value, they go out, they speak to their faculty members, and they realize that the pure intentioned research-based model is something that really can energize an already excellent, amazing staff. As Dr. Bossert said, you never want good to be the enemy of great. We're doing amazing things, but I often say to the faculty, until 100% of our students are getting 100% of the time, we still have more work to do. Becoming a reflective teacher. The key piece that Danielson identifies in her rubric in Domain 4 talks about a highly effective teacher is also a highly reflective practitioner. We know our teachers are evaluating and assessing their lessons on a daily basis. Whether an administrator is in the room or not, that's what your best practitioners do. During the final phase of instructional rounds, participants should do the following 3 things. 1, they look at strategies that they observed, that they saw, and that they too are also using effectively. So it just reinforces what they're doing in their classroom. Then they look to see, hey, that's a strategy that someone else is using, but I don't like to use it, but I haven't used it. Perhaps I will try that in my classroom. And then sometimes they also see a strategy that is better than theirs. And so the goal is to extinguish any practice that is not really yielding the most optimal result for our students. In closing, someone's timing me. I'm working so hard here. The data from the survey indicated an increased desire of our faculty to participate. What we saw was truly magical. And in the end, they really understand the value of the program. So I really am so proud of the work that we as the administrative team did, and that includes Ms. Eileen Kelly-Gorman and Ms. Fine, talking to the faculty at department meetings. Anytime we observed somebody that we saw implementing a best practice, we would say, hey, that was a really great thing that you did. Would you mind opening up your classroom? So the fact that we were all sort of speaking the same language and propelling the vision forward allowed it to come to fruition. And while it took 3 years, sometimes you gotta go slow to go fast, and the results were phenomenal. And I truly believe that our students are going to be the greatest benefactors. I, again, can speak for hours at length about the power of this program, but I open it up to any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank
great presentation. So the first question I have is, was it important, the composition of the group, or did it not matter because it's really basically a self-reflection? So, you know, did you have English teachers, math teachers, whatever, was that not part of the, was not an important component?
I think every step of implementing this process was done judiciously and with great intentionality. So when we go into a classroom, we'll talk, and we see group work, and we see groups that sort of get into groups and work synergistically. We'll talk in a post-observation conference to a teacher and say, how did you make the groups? Well, I matched this person up with this person for this reason. This person, perhaps they were heterogeneous groups, or they put groups together for various reasons, to jigsaw, but there's always a deliberate intentionality in how you compose the groups, and we did that. We wanted to make sure that we had our early adopters that were energized, that could facilitate the groups, and we did deliberately make up, you know, some veteran teachers with newer teachers, and try to make them interdisciplinary.
And then you talked about doing the workshop first, but basically, I saw the questions on the back. Were those given to them before, or was that really after, when you were doing the post-discussion, that, so that did they go in with, you know, like an idea of what they were looking for, or was it really more just on the reflective end, which was the most important?
So interestingly, what we did was we did like a pre-survey to try to glean some of their, you know, what their expectations are, what their thoughts were about the process. Those that were shared with you were after the workshop and even after the implementation of the instructional rounds that we did. So it was really done after they had participated in the initiative.
And finally, I think going back to when you were speaking about your administration rounds going through, did you encounter, like when you went into a classroom, that maybe you saw practice that you didn't feel was the best practice, and how do you address that? Or were you really closing, I think it would be hard to close your eyes to that, but I'm just curious about how that would have worked.
So I think for me at least, the idea of those administrative walkthroughs is to focus on the positive and the positive only. That's what we really wanted to glean from those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
We saved anything else, or we will be saving anything else for those more formative or those informal observation process. We didn't want to confuse the two, because the whole professional development of this is to focus on that best practice and that best practice only.
So you seeked out a best practice, you know.
They were, quite frankly, the folks at Dr. Hall's class last night asked that. Like, you know, it's probably someone's first posture to criticize and look for the wrong. I have to tell you, there's not much wrong going on in Johnson High School. Like, the positive is so overwhelmingly present that you don't even notice. And the folks that we are selecting, you know, deliberately for the instructional rounds and having colleagues visit, they are your highly effective teachers that really have refined their craft. We want to model best practice, and so we're selecting the exemplars for that purpose.
Final question, ultimately, is the goal to make sure that every class and every teacher participates in this?
That is our goal, and we are going to go slow to go fast, and if it takes us 2-3 more years, and the eventual goal really is to build capacity, and we're getting there with the staff, where administration really has very limited involvement in leading the workshops and discussing the norms, and that staff are requesting on their own schedule, where it's not formalized, like PD in my learning plan. On this day, you know, Mr. Pushy and Ms. Hewer is going to partner up with Ms. Ganjoyan and Ms. Pilaker to go and conduct rounds of these 3 classrooms, because they want to see how those teachers are integrating technology. So where teachers start to identify the areas that they're trying to lift, and then, you know, perhaps we're helping them to identify the classrooms to visit, but it's really initiated by the teacher and led by teachers.
Thank you.
This was an amazing presentation, job well done. Many years in the making. The cultural shift that I have experienced in that high school is just amazing. Coming from a time where APPR was such a focus, and people were running scared and afraid of the administration, the pendulum has swung the other way. And I hear it personally from the staff, just it's a happier place to be, it's a more inclusive place to be, and people have less fear. So it's really, really amazing. And then just being able to learn from your peers, you know, from your colleagues, and maybe not coming from above, like you just said. You know, the people that are working and they have boots on the ground every day and are immersed in it often have great ideas. Not that the administration doesn't, of course they do as well, but they're actually doing it, they know what works and doesn't work, and then they don't have the fear of speaking to that. And this is such a great benefit to our district, to our staff, to our children, and I'm so excited about what the next few years are going to be as a result of this program. You guys did a great job implementing.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
And again, I just really want to applaud the efforts of the faculty for their vulnerability and their willingness to embrace this initiative. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just reiterate that I think it's great to create an environment where teachers can learn from each other. That safety, that willingness to be vulnerable, it's complementary to the feedback they're getting from administration through formal observations, et cetera. I think you hit on a key point going forward, which is you guys had to model the behavior early on to demonstrate what you wanted, but the more you get out of the way and give teachers the ability to model that behavior themselves, that peer-to-peer guidance is going to get them out of the kind of, this is what I've done, you know, for the last 2 years, and I'm so focused on what I'm doing, how do I broaden my lens? And I heard you say that there was intentionality in terms of the diversity of cross-pollination of who was going into classrooms, right? Having a language teacher go into a math class and observe something that they can apply, it really starts to break down barriers that gets people to just be open to a broader set of possibilities. And I applaud the fact that you guys are already seeing that if you get out of the way, you're gonna have this great environment where peer-to-peer learning is happening, right? And that positive reinforcement is gonna open people up so much more when there is constructive feedback, right? When there is feedback from an administrator, because they have this great foundation of openness to feedback in general from peers. So I think this is a great initiative. My only question is, how do you accelerate it? Is this something just at the high school? Do you see extensibility in other buildings? And maybe that's, you know, more of a question for Dr. Bossert, but.
You know, as I mentioned at the initial thank you. You being the broccoli, you believe in the power, and we could talk for another hour afterwards. I see the value in the program for all those reasons that you have identified. Where do we see it going? As I mentioned, teacher-led, teacher-initiated, teacher request. Teacher identifying the goals. I've often shared with the faculty that, you know, you can learn a lot from your elementary educators. I think the power of working with the directors is that we see some of our classrooms at the high school look similar to what you might see in an elementary environment, creating those warm environments, that flexible seating. So sharing those best practices in any way through department meetings, faculty meetings. Yes, administration is sharing it because we see it. Part of my passion is when I first became an administrator, I remember visiting a brand new teacher teaching Global 9, watching her teach a lesson on feudalism, and I said, oh my goodness, I wish I would have seen that. I would have done a far better job. Now looking back, I probably didn't do a great job teaching feudalism. So when you become an administrator, it's like you have all of this knowledge, you just want to share it with your staff, but you understand the divide that sometimes exists, and you know they have to see it for themselves. And so this process allows for that. So if a faculty member at the high school said, I really want to visit the elementary school or the middle school, I can absolutely see us broadening this to, you know, buildings across the district, and we'd welcome that.
Thank you, great job.
I had a question about when a faculty member volunteered. Were they volunteering to open up their classroom for a specific, you know, aspect of the classroom, or it was just you can come into my classroom and whatever you take away, you take away?
Specific, you know, we would share with them in advance that this is the day that we're conducting the rounds, like well in advance. So the faculty, like a formal observation, they're prepared, they know people are coming in. But we really want it to be organic. We want the faculty members that volunteered. There was a lot going into building their confidence and supporting their vulnerability and thanking them, really, and just telling them, do you, what you're doing is wonderful, and folks should see it. And the folks that are visiting are doing equally wonderful things. And please, one of the concerns that some of the faculty members expressed was, would this be disruptive to the educational environment? Like, would the students be like, what's going on? But the more you do it, it becomes an internalized expectation. And, you know, I share with the faculty members, when we come in, do not do anything differently. And share with your students in advance that your classroom has been selected, not solely because of the teacher, but because how the students engage in the learning process. And be proud to interact with the faculty members that are coming in, because your teachers are coming in to learn from you. So imagine the power of a student in an English class seeing their, you know, for example, their band teacher coming in to sit down and see what they're learning and why author's purpose is so important. And vice versa, how an English teacher visiting a band teacher's classroom can understand the value of a band lesson, and how all of that allows the band teacher to be equally successful. So it breaks down the walls, it reinforces the whole child, it lets us all know that we're all working in pursuit of the same goal. And so I think those are the messages that we try to promote to the teachers whose classrooms we selected.
But for example, the warm, welcoming classroom teacher, where that was a lot of the feedback.
It's like so
That
obvious
just,
when
right,
you
well,
walk
that was
in.
their takeaway. It
Yes.
wasn't that you're there for that reason particularly.
No.
It's not a themed round per se.
Part of it, we, you know, again,
Well,
we're
encourage
judicious
maybe
and
that,
yes,
right.
correct.
Right. But it's not a themed round, like this round, we're all gonna be looking at classroom decor and you know.
But that's a great point. And again, when I mentioned it could take on different iterations, you could theoretically create a cluster of teams saying we're only going to go into classrooms looking for best practices that are aligned with student engagement or formative assessment or integration of technology. Or we're all going out today only looking at, you know, 2A classroom environment. So yes, it could lend
I
itself
actually
to that
liked
as
it
well.
better that you just walk into the room and you take away whatever you wanna take away from the classroom.
You know, it was interesting, in the morning workshops, we tried to put a focus, like what are 3 areas that we want to focus on? Because even as administrators, when you're going in and you're doing the evaluation process, there's a lot to kind of capture. So we wanted to give them a focus point, but there was just, it organically morphed into, you know, them just identifying every best practice possible.
I think that actually takes away some of the ownership, right? Part of it being organic and letting them go in and just see what they observe really puts the ownership on them to bring to it a fresh perspective. The more prescriptive you get, I think it actually limits the potential creativity.
But you wanted to give them some guidance, you know, that they weren't just out there, oh, what are we looking for? But correct, it just morphed into something that was reflective of the teams.
And then the participants could choose whether they wanted to walk into the classrooms and observe or open their doors, right? Or was everyone that was opening also making rounds?
No, the
Okay.
participants in the
Choose.
first round, you know, were visiting others, and those folks now, we would like for them to get out and participate, so that they also see from the other end, right, what it looks like.
So if I may, just a few comments before we conclude, and I know Dr. Hull has some as well. There are some cliches that you'll hear in every teacher preparation program in the country. Things like, you're only as good as the teacher next door, and that there are no new ideas, or very few new ideas in education. You have to beg, borrow, and steal, all those things that will make you be an effective teacher. And then, unless you make a concerted effort, you place teachers alone in their classrooms or surrounded by only their 4 walls. So unless you make concerted efforts for collaboration, sharing, and articulation, they won't occur. So this is a wonderful example of a practice that forces the very nature of collaboration and sharing of these ideas, and gives our teachers the opportunity to give and receive best practice from their colleagues. We have some extraordinary teachers in the district, and one of the benefits we have as administrators is visiting each classroom to pick up all the wonderful things. And I have to tell you, in our formal observation process, when I do a post-observation conference to talk about how I feel, you know, for a future focus teachers might be able to improve, I'm moving away from my own ideas and simply sharing observations I've made in other classrooms. And this is an example of how you remove the administrator from that model and allow them to gain their growth from each other. So it really is wonderful. And it's been said a few times already, but I think it bears repeating. If Ms. Brzezinski had come in with the vision of this is what we're doing, at that time, it would not have been successful. There would have been very few teachers willing to participate, and a very questionable motive for doing so, I think would have been perceived. And the thing that had to be most firmly established is trust. And how do we do that? It's by building relationships. And the administration of the high school has done a wonderful job in building relationships with faculty so they are seen as a resource, they are seen as a partner, they are seen as someone to help move instruction and the program forward. And that doesn't happen by accident. So the time that was invested in forging those relationships and building the trust that it is a palatable change at John Glenn High School has been wonderful to observe from the outside looking in. So I commend our administrators for the yeoman's tour that you engaged in to get to where we are today. And I join the board in looking forward to the growth that this program will continue to have both at Glenn and throughout the district.
I have two more comments that while you were speaking just came to me. One, I think it needs to be commended and appreciated how creative and economical this is from a professional development standpoint. I mean, it's completely in-house. We're not paying, a trainer. We're covering the substitutes, but we'd be doing that anyway, so I think that's a great use of professional development. And also, the impact, stated or not stated, that will have on a student to see their teachers being lifelong learners, trying to improve themselves, getting better at what they're doing, can be a real inspiration for students in the classroom to encourage them in what they're learning and their self-betterment. So I just think those are two aspects that kind of weren't necessarily touched on that make this very beneficial too.
Thank you, we agree as well.
Thank you.
And if I could add, I think another benefit that will happen is because we all learn from experience, the fact that teachers are having the opportunity to have people come in and watch their work beyond the administrators, and that they're walking in and seeing things, I think it's going to enrich our APPR process and our observation process, because now they're going to have a lens on what the experience of an administrator is as you're going in. And I'm anticipating even richer dialogues in our post-observation process as a result of it. I do think there will be interest of going to other buildings as we go forward. Last year we had Harley started a learning walk. It's not the same thing because the teachers are not teaching at the same time, but the teachers are going around and visiting each other's classrooms. This coming Superintendent's Conference Day, Harley and Boyd teachers will be engaging in another learning walk. Again, it's not with children there, which this is a whole powerful piece of the instruction around, but it is the beginning of building this process of how we learn from each other. And I think the high school is going to provide an excellent model for that. And when you look at a school system, the teachers who are the most isolated are in the high school because they're so departmentalized. So the other thing that is so powerful about this is the cross-pollination of learning from each other and really understanding more about what a student's life is like outside of just that one class and what the expectations are with that one teacher. So I also applaud the work. It's very powerful in helping our students and our staff.
And just to expand upon that, I think from a student perspective, you brought it up on the Marcus, that the students are also seeing that. They're seeing how, the cross-pollination, and it's giving them the skills that that's what we're all about going forward, these lifelong skills about how to work together, collaboration, how to think, how to empower. So I'm excited to see how the students view it coming down, their responses, back and what they think and how they learn from it. Thank you.
Thank you both. That was a very thorough and wonderful presentation. And again, certainly cause for celebration of the good things happening at Glenn. Ms. Brzezinski, your portion of the presentation was exactly 30 minutes as requested. And there's the question and answers that took us the additional time. Mr. McNamara, the score is 1-0 at the end of 2, the Yankees. And I know it is a very hectic and busy day at Glenn tomorrow, concluding in a 2-hour pep rally. So if the two of you would like to get a head start on preparing for that,
recognition of donations, if Mrs. Weiss can go through some of our donations.
Yes. So, the donations that we have this week, this meeting, is, the first is $23.20 to support the after-school clubs for the 2019 fall session. As listed, they are the Boyd Makerspace Club, the Boyd Love Your Selfie Club, the Harley Crazy Eights Math Club, the Harley Makerspace Club, the Harley Love Yourself Selfie Club, the Harley Culinary Kids Club, and then $27.25 to support the After Cooking School Club at John Glenn for the 2019-2020 school year, and that is from the Elwood Booster Club. So thank you very much. These are all wonderful programs that enrich our kids. And then from the Elwood SEPTA, $7,480 to support the after-school clubs for the 2019-2020 school year as listed. The Harley Friendship Club, the Harley Crafty Kids Club, the Boyd Friendship Circle, and the Boyd Sports Club. Again, wonderful programs to enrich our children's educational experience. Thank you, and thank you to all those who donate and to volunteer their time.
May I have a motion to accept the donations? Mr. Lamena, seconded by Mrs. Mamalito. All in favor? 4-0. May I have another motion to accept the consent agenda? Mrs. Mamalito, seconded by Mrs. Weiss. All in favor? 4-0. Here. Problem with the consent agenda is that I can never find the next item, but we found it. Can I have a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding from the Suffolk County Police Department? Mrs. Mamalito, do I have a second? Mr. Lamena, questions or comments from the board? Dr. Bossert, would you like to make a comment before I ask the public?
Sure. This is a template that was produced by the Suffolk County Police Department using their counsel. It's been reviewed by counsel that represents the school district, and I am pleased to share that the language within the agreement that articulates the roles and responsibilities of a school resource officer who will be present on the school campus was written collaboratively with the Suffolk County Council of School Superintendents. And I think the roles and responsibilities very properly reflect what an SRO is and what an SRO is not. And this agreement that we've asked the board to approve tonight is uniform to all of the agreements that will be placed before districts that are serviced by the Suffolk County Police Department. And one of the requirements is for it to be accepted. Without this agreement in place, we cannot use school resource officer services through the county. And there is a requirement that the board opens up the MOA for public comment or questions from those present at the time of the vote.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Seeing no audience, we will assume there's no questions. All in favor? 4-0. Okay, we are up to the policy portion. Can I have a motion to accept the second reading and the adoption of all policies listed under I guess I should read that. Do I have a motion that we would accept the following policies? 2210, board reorganizational meeting. 2350, board business meeting procedures. 4325, academic intervention services. 4531, field trips and excursions. 4532, board appointed school volunteers. 5150, school admissions. 5225, student personal expression. 5420 student health services. Can I have a motion to accept? Mrs. Mamalito, seconded by Mr. Lamena. All in favor? 4-0. Can I have a motion to rescind policy 2260.1, rescinding the Citizens Finance Budget Advisory Committee? I have a motion made by Mrs. Mamalito, seconded by Mr. Lamena. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? 4-0. Residents' remarks number 2, everything that I said previously applies. Do we have any resident remarks? See none. Do we have a motion? Why am I blanking on the phrasing? To adjourn, thank you. Mrs. Mamalito, seconded by Mrs. Weiss. All in favor? 4-0.
Thank you, Board.